Yeah, I had to change it to 1 p.m. because I kind of forgot there was a class until 12.
Oh, yeah.
And I forgot that it takes more than 0 seconds to set everything up and get it ready.
Yeah. We rolling?
Yeah, we're
rolling.
We're talking about the live again.
Yeah, we're going to explain what we're actually going to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to give you guys a better sneak peek of things today. Because we each have the 3 major modules, but I understand how to some people it can be a little like tricky to actually know what those mean because they can be kind of like abstract and arbitrary. So that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah, really break it down and explain what you're going to get for your time. And, well, the date, we got to finalize now for real.
Yeah.
July 20th at West London CrossFit from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m.
Yes.
We're going to do our best to keep it within that window.
Yeah, we were just saying how the hardest part about the whole thing is going to be restricting it to 3 hours. Because we actually had plans initially to do like a multi-day event, and we're still going to do that in the future for sure. But, I mean, it's just not practical to do that right away.
Yeah. Want to get one done with some good information before we ask people to spend a whole weekend with us.
Exactly. That's the big thing there, right?
Yeah.
Well, and especially those who, I mean, we already have some interest and some signups from people who aren't really in our like immediate network. I mean, by that, I mean, don't go to West London CrossFit. We don't really see them on a daily basis. So that's encouraging. And that's what we'd like to get more of with this one and with the future events that we hold. Yeah.
I was even talking to a couple members the other day that they're listening to the podcast. And it's funny because all this stuff is always going on in my head, and I'm sure it's going on in your head too. But in the moment and in the class, when you're coaching a CrossFit group class, you're not talking about all the stuff that we're talking about. So
yeah, that's true.
It's funny because once I feel like I know you as a completely different person now.
Yeah, I always forget that.
Yeah.
And it's probably a good thing that I forget it. Well, for one, you forget that people listen to you, and then 2, you don't know who's actually listening to you. Because it's true. Like, I mean, you definitely have your own podcast that you're faithful with. I have my own. Mm-hmm. And so if I were to ever like see that individual or meet them or whatever, it's just kind of like it's like a kind of like a different experience. Cause you, like you said, you feel like you know that person in a different way, right? Even though they may not, I mean, hypothetically, they could absolutely have no idea who I am. Right. Which for all the big podcasts out there, that's the way it is. Like the host has absolutely no clue who's listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes it interesting.
It's been fun so far. So it's exciting for me to take it to like the next step. Like we had somewhat of a pretty rough outline when we first started this whole project of what we thought we could make of it. And, it's starting to snowball in the right direction. What is this, 36 weeks in?
Yeah.
I think 37, 36. So
30, that's a lot of potatoes. Holy shit.
Lots of potatoes. Thanks for putting up with us.
Oh yeah, we got to get that potato video rolling.
Yeah, for sure. People.
I think the first one, I shouldn't give this away, but the first one we should just do with potato animations.
Yeah. Just set 2 potatoes down on the table.
A talking potato.
With the googly eyes.
Man, that's how you get views.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, let's go through a few of these specifics, shall we?
Let's do that. So each of us have 3 main modules that we're going to be covering in our 90 minutes each.
Yeah. So, like, before we get into these, I'm curious, where did you kind of first come up with these ideas? Like, what basically led you to say, hey, I think these are 3 important topics that I want to cover and topics that I think would be very valuable for people?
I seem to go in like peaks and valleys as to like what I'm obsessing about, and these are the things that I'm obsessing about right now. So I think since I'm so excited about talking about it, and I've created a lot of content around it and just put a lot of thought and conversation into it outside of the podcast, that was just a natural, it's the first thing that came to my mind when I was like 3 things to talk about, boom, 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 and it took like 5 seconds. So this past weekend was Can East. So where these topics really came up to me is just sitting and listening to the people talking in the stands. Because when you're at an event like that, it's multi-level because they have scaled all the way through to elite. And I mean, the scale division it's not like it's competitive still. It's really good because the setup is like you do the intermediate and scaled qualifiers the same, and then they put the top finishers in the intermediate, and then there's a cutoff line, and then the cutoff line is scaled. So if there's a lot of good people that could potentially be in the elite division signing up for the intermediate division. Side note, don't do that. Stop it. I saw it happen again. It drives me crazy. Stop doing that. You're ruining it for everybody. But then
the people
below the line just go and scaled. So it's like,
okay, I see.
There's a couple people from our gym that are not skilled athletes, but they were in the scale division due to the qualifying process.
Right. So when it comes to the elite versus intermediate, people had to make the choice. Do I sign up for elite and risk not qualifying and not being able to compete, or drop, right? Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's,
you guys, if you listen to this enough, you know my stance on that. It's always you go to the top level possible and if you don't qualify, get better so that you can qualify. It's a simple thing for me.
I totally agree.
It's real frustrating seeing people constantly go the other direction.
Yeah, that applies for anything in life, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, why would you just sink to? Like the exception, obviously, is like the intermediate to scale because that was the qualifying standard.
That's
but
right.
In terms of like the elite, it's like don't sink to something that you're like less than capable of. You know what I mean?
It's a character thing for me. It's just I see that and I see the names and I'm like, you're dead to me. I got nothing for you.
On that note.
Yeah. So they're just listening to people chatting in the crowd, like after their events and things like that, they come up and talk with their friends, and it's a conversation where it's like, oh, I need to get better at blank. You fill in the blank with whatever you want. It's like, I need to get better at rope climbs. I'll do better at that event. I need to get better at the assault bike, and then I'll do better at that event. It's like, that's cool. It's a good noticing thing that you're noticing what needs to get better and you're able to pick out certain pieces.
Yeah.
And some people got a little bit more in depth with it. It's like, I need to work on how many pulls on a rope climb. So they were doing like 2.5 when it could have been 2.
Okay.
If they change their steps and change their setup a little bit. Cool noticing, but how does somebody actually do that? Right. And my concern is, the answer usually from whoever this was, whether it was their friend, coach, fellow athlete, whatever, was, oh yeah, you just need to do that more. It's like, that's the worst advice ever.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's just like, it's not necessarily true, A, and then B, there's no direction with that. So I think I'm obviously, since I'm so obsessed with this stuff, I overthink that. I know what the intention was of that individual. It's like they want to encourage this person, like, oh, you want to get better at that? Okay, then do that more. Mm-hmm. And that's really nice, but there's no direction with that. So somebody say, how do you know that that's actually what you need to get better at?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so that I would say that right there, that's a perfect tie-in, I think, to the how to assess your greatest fitness strengths and weaknesses. Because I mean, you just hit the nail on the head right there. It's like the automatic decision is, oh, you suck at that. That's a weakness. You just need to do more of it.
Right.
So what would be, I mean, you kind of alluded to this already, but what do you think is like the biggest mistake when it comes to people trying to target first trying to target a weakness, and then part B, I suppose, in how people identify their strengths, like which errors they make when saying, oh, this is my best move or this is my best lift, and then kind of how they use that. I know that's kind of like that's deep perfect question, but
that's good. So part A is that I don't think people are properly assessing their current standing with something. So just sticking with rope climbs, for example, because we've been talking about it already. They'll say they're weak at rope climbs, but they're doing rope climbs in a CrossFit workout as an assessment.
Okay.
It needs to be a lot more specific to determine whether or not it's the rope climb itself that's the issue, like your technique on a rope climb, upper body pulling strength, grip endurance. If it was combined with something that was also grip intensive, or if it was more cardiovascular, like are you just too tired? Do you not have the capacity to be able to function, and do a complex movement like a rope climb when you're fatigued? It can't be that broad. Like let's use a bigger CrossFit example. So you can't say, you do Murph and then say, oh, I need to work on, in order to improve my Murph time, I need to work on my push-ups, right? Like there's so many other factors that are going into making those push-ups more difficult in a workout like Murph, to determine that, to just say,
could be that your pull-ups suck, right?
Exactly. You're just blowing your shoulders up doing your pull-ups. Yes, it's a completely different movement, but it's a compounding fatigue. And in order to assess properly, we need to be able to separate these things into testable pieces that you can come back and reassess later on.
That's interesting. So people will get basically like a toolbox that they can use to assess these things.
Yeah. My goal is to help people determine whether what they find to be their weakest link, if that's actually their weakest link.
That's cool.
So things like structural balance and strength, like is your ratio and strength comparison.
Yeah, I like that one.
Back squat, front squat, power snatch to back squat.
Well, and
bench press to back squat, things like that.
And I asked you like a couple weeks ago about a ratio of like back squat to box squat, even because that's just one example, and then but it's just something
box squat's more difficult, right?
Yeah, which
I've never heard before. That was
me either. So I was a little confused with that.
And I mean, that right there, it's like there's no like one way, right? True, so for me to tell you like, oh no, back squats are harder than box squats. Like your experience is that the box squat was more difficult than the back squat. So how do we determine what's going on there?
Yeah.
To make that, make that more challenging for you relative to other people I've had experience with where they're like, oh, box squats are way easier.
Yeah, I like that. So it's almost as much of like as much as a toolbox of like, use this test to identify strength A, weakness B, but also it's almost like a way of thinking too, right? Like I think that from my understanding is that people will get like a new way of thinking out of this, to literally like, just to use this example of, hey, I sucked at a box squat, so what does this actually mean? Like it doesn't mean I have to do more box squats necessarily, right?
Exactly.
So, but in that moment, I had no idea. And it, like, from my perspective, I find this really interesting because that can be frustrating as hell. Like when you have the motivation to improve on something, but you don't know if your efforts are going towards the right thing.
That's right.
Like that can be incredibly frustrating.
Spinning your tires.
Yeah, exactly. Even just having like the peace of mind, like all this work I'm putting in is going in the right direction.
That's right. Yeah. And that's going to be the focus of that first module that I'm going to cover, is how to properly assess these things. And we're going to go over strength components, gymnastics, and metabolic conditioning pieces as well. Nice. And energy system training, that sort of thing. So that'd be 3 separate pieces, but then talking within those 3 separate pieces of what has to happen. And the other stuff is kind of going to get covered in the other 2 modules, so I won't go too far.
Okay.
With that right now. Do you want to just flow through mine and then go yours?
Yeah, we can do that.
Because it kind of flows
pretty
good.
I agree. That'll be easier.
Yeah. All right. So the next point we're going to be covering is just avoiding the trap of what I call offensive progressions.
Yeah, I find this very interesting.
This is one of my favorite things to talk about for sure when it comes to fitness. And let me paint a picture for you. So athlete A, do a standard assessment piece that I would do with pretty much all my more advanced CrossFit athletes. 5-minute AMRAP of strict handstand push-ups. There's a goal with that workout being at least 50 in order for me to not really be concerned about your strict handstand push-ups on their own in terms of like needing development there. We can pretty much be confident that we can mix that in any way that we need to in like a mixed modal environment. And this athlete is good enough at that movement that they're able to make those contractions mostly aerobic, and it's not a huge deal for them. You know what I mean? Whereas if somebody gets a score of 5, like we got some work to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those two athletes can't train the same. And an offensive progression for that 5 strict handstand push-up person in 5 minutes would be, okay, well, now we're going to do a 5-minute EMOM of 2 strict handstand push-ups per minute because that's more than you're doing now. Well, they did a 5-minute AMRAP and they only got 5. So how is this athlete A, going to go from doing 5 in 5 minutes to 10 in 5 minutes just because you said do it?
Yeah.
Then that coach probably gets notes, say things like, oh, I had to put down an ab mat, or, oh, I only got through 3 minutes. And like, that is really discouraging to the athlete, one, because you're giving them the wrong prescription. So you're going to be breaking that trust a little bit right away. And they're going to question what you're doing with them. Mm-hmm. Well, I would, if my coach gave me something, I'm like, the fuck is he talking about? Like, I can't do that. My assessment was this. And then now you're having me do double the work in the same amount of time the next week. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So things like that, or using that same example, like that person's not ready to do strict handstand push-ups in a CrossFit style workout, like a mixed modal setup. So why, like, that's not the best practice. Could you do, say, 20-minute AMRAP, 1 strict handstand push-up, 500-meter row to make it super simple? Maybe they could get through that, but why? Why are you doing that? You know, like, are you trying to make them increase their aerobic capacity, or are you trying to work on your strict handstand push-ups? And somebody who can only do 5 in 5-minute window, there's going to be elements outside of a strict handstand push-up that they have to get better at, right? Like, it's either going to be a body weight thing. Like, say it's a guy who weighs 225 and he's super jacked and he likes being super jacked. The question for that guy is like, okay, well, do you want to be super jacked or do you want to be better at CrossFit?
Yeah.
Right. Like, because sometimes you have to lose weight to get better at your sport. That's just the way it works. Right. Like, you can't be, I can't say that you can't be, because there's always the exception of the rule that makes it to the CrossFit Games being that big. But like, if your end goal is something like the CrossFit Games and you weigh 225 pounds, you should probably get lighter.
Yeah.
And if you're 6'6", 225 pounds, and I don't think CrossFit's the right sport for you, you should probably go do swimming or something like that, you know? But these are conversations that, like, you have to be comfortable saying stuff like this when you're coaching people, because if you're just coddling them and giving them bullshit, like 2 years down the road, they're going to be pissed because you wasted their time. They're going to be like, what? Why'd you tell me I could do this, man, when you knew I couldn't?
As I'm listening to this, though, I'm thinking in my head about all the times I've, like, hopelessly tried to program myself, either, God forbid, never a full workout, but just like a WOD. And I'm just thinking of examples in my mind where I'm like, that was dumb. Like, why did I do that?
You have that experience now, though.
Yeah, but I mean, even like, you don't appreciate that in the moment, right? Like, so yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
That would be an example of the offensive progression idea. That's obviously not the one that I'm going to use in the seminar, but just giving you a little bit of a taste. Yeah. And again, we're going to cover the 3 main elements that you need for the sport. So strength, gymnastics, and your energy system training, because it applies for everything. Yeah. Like, I saw a program from a gym that will remain nameless because it doesn't matter, but it was, it's just stuff that doesn't really make sense. It's like 5x3 back squats at 97%. It's like, I don't know anyone. Like, if you can do 3 back squats at 97% of your 1 rep max, like, you're an anomaly.
Probably not your 97%.
it's just stuff like that. You know, it's like you got to think a little bit more when you're doing your programming. You can't just go, bleh. It's like, oh, this makes sense. Or could our people that have been at the gym for 5 months and this is the first time they've ever done strength training hit 97% for 3 if we ask them to right now? Probably, because they're so underdeveloped in their strength that they're so like new that their 1 rep max that they got during however they came up with that number isn't a true 1 rep max.
Yeah, like they probably get a new 1 rep max like every week or every 2 weeks if they actually tested it. Yeah,
exactly. It would just be like climb. And I mean, test week's going on right now at West London CrossFit. And you see some people stand up their max back squat. Their max, I'm using hand quotations. And it's like, flew right up, but their face made it look hard. And then they rack it, like, oh, that's heavy. It's like, no, go up. And it's like 50 pounds later, they're still squatting that barbell, right? It's an understanding.
That perceived rate of exertion can be misleading sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially 5 a.m. folk.
Oh, that's a whole other animal.
Yeah. Side note, though, I love seeing, you love seeing everyone hit PRs, but especially people that are in like their 40s and 50s even.
Yeah.
And some big fucking numbers too, especially for the major lifts, which is what you want to be strong at for longevity, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool that they're the strongest that they've ever been at 40 and 50 years old.
No shit.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you about the volume component of the offensive progressions, because I know we talk about this a lot, but it keeps coming up. So I think we need to just quickly address this again. Well, I'll let you tackle that. The reason I ask is because it's still, the more and more I think that it's going away because people are learning better, the more I just continue to see it. And what I'm referring to is just this idea of, hey, I'm going to train 6-7 days a week and not take rest days, and I'm going to get better by doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one, because I just had somebody start with me this month. What was the first Monday? The 3rd just started with me. And right now I'm working with her, and only 3 days a week is what I'm programming. And her note after week 1 was, hey, I've been training 5 days a week. I'm ready for more. And you just kind of have to go through the explanation of why I'm not going to give her just what she wants to, because that's not my job as a coach to just be like, oh, you want 5 days a week? Sure. Yeah. Right? Like, if your coach does everything you ask them to do, you should probably question whether or not they're really coaching you, or they're just kind of like, I don't know, a part of the ride, you know?
Well, it's the equivalent to like you're playing hockey and you consistently take 5 to 6 penalties a game and your coach doesn't tell you anything because you said you like taking penalties.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. People just don't appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So the big thing there is there's different styles of programs and things like that. And just from our conversations and from what I saw that she was doing before we started working together, you just make the call that 3 days a week with Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so rest days in between and then weekends off, with some light activity on the weekends was going to be the best fit for this individual. Mm-hmm. Because the things that they need to work on and the goals that they have, will it eventually lead to needing probably 7 to 8 sessions per week? Yes. But I can't go from the inconsistencies that she was having before. So it was a hot and cold sort of situation. Like some weeks were, 7 days a week, all this. And then she tells me that like the next week, just kind of all burnt out and like did like nothing. And then followed this progression for 4 weeks, got hurt, couldn't train for 2 months, did this for this amount. It was just kind of like a constant wave. So all this person needs to start off with me is to develop consistency training 3 times a week for 3 months, in my opinion. That's just, that was what the decision that I made. And through conversations with her about how she's feeling right now, I'm feeling pretty good about how everything's going for her. We'll probably move to 4 or 5 sessions a week a little bit earlier than 3 months as I had originally planned, because her results, first of all, like the numbers that she's showing me and the video she's sending me with her movement quality and things like that, is getting much better. And she's telling me that she's recovering well, and then kind of cross-referencing to her results to what she's telling me is showing that she's probably telling me the truth. Because, as an athlete, sometimes you're kind of like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm fine, right? You got to really keep a close eye on things like that as well. So just from a volume perspective, like, you have to slowly work your way up to that as well. And it can be frequency, volume through the week, and then it can also be volume per session. So this is one example that I'm going to use in this seminar. But if somebody usually does, like, say 20 chest bar pull-ups a week, like, you can't program that person 100 chest bar pull-ups the next week.
Yeah.
You have to look at the volume through the session and look at the volume across the entire week, and then slowly build on that volume, leading to when the volume's needed, right? If they're 6 months out from their next CrossFit competition, they don't need to be doing 100 butterfly chest bar pull-ups in a week consistently over and over and over again. That's not what they need at that time. There's a proper, and this is what CrossFit right now is missing big time on I think at the most elite level, it's not missing, but in like that middle range, I think proper periodization is what's missing. Like, you have to plan and structure your entire year and cycle. For the Olympics, they're working on quads, right? Which with the functional fitness thing, eventually that's what we're going to be working with in functional fitness, is we're going to be looking at quads, like a 4-year thing to try and qualify for the Olympics. That's the end goal. Yeah. Right now, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this competition. And I'm, as an athlete, super guilty of this myself. I did it last year. I did a competition like every month, and I decided to do it like 2 weeks before. And my coach is like, okay. Like, he can't properly program for me and prescribe, you know what I mean? So, like, you can't be picking and choosing random shit to compete in just because you want to, because it's fun. If you want to be a top level CrossFit athlete, if you want to be in that middle range and go and compete and have fun, that's a totally different conversation. But don't tell me that you want to finish in a top whatever in the open, or you want to qualify for a sanctioned event and you're off doing local competitions every other weekend. Like, you're not going to get there. It's just not the same. And simple, Rich Froning didn't do any other competitions other than the CrossFit Open, regionals, and the games his entire career.
That's
so argue with that, he's the best, well, arguably the best to ever do it. And that's just what they follow. So that's in a nutshell the offensive progressions. But as you can see, I'm going to have to really do a good job of not rambling my whole 90 minutes away talking about
We'll be setting alarms.
Yeah. I'll touch on my last one quick.
Crucial.
It's okay. Don't really need too much time.
Kind of tied in,
Yeah. I don't want to give away too much, because this is more of a hands-on. You need stuff in front of you in order to go through this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to be like trying to pick stuff out of the air. But the final piece is programming customized to your assessment score. So not only are we going to go over proper assessment pieces for the strength, gymnastics, and energy system training, we're going to break down those assessments, I'll come up with like scenarios of results in different pieces across all 3 elements, and then determine how that athlete should go about programming for themselves or go about their training. So, and that's going to be looking at their strength results, their gymnastics results, and the energy system training, creating priorities based on those assessments, and then creating a plan based on those priorities, and then a prescription based on the plan. That's going to be the whole thing. And that's going to be the takeaway for you guys, is you're going to have the knowledge of how to do that for yourself. That's my goal. Yeah, that pretty much sums up my portion. Really going to have to come up with a foolproof plan and a series of alarms to keep myself.
Man, that's the hardest part with these, honestly.
Yeah, especially when you just like talking about it, I could talk about that stuff all day long, and there's so many different scenarios and that's the thing, right? Like, I guess that's one thing I should mention too. Like, what you're going to come away with isn't an equation that you can just punch stuff into. It takes a lot of thought and effort and time put into planning out something like that for yourself, I mean, as a plug, that's what I do. So if you're having a hard time, the guy that you can, reach out through Instagram, email me, track me down at the gym, preferably when I'm not coaching, because that's not really fair to everybody else. But like, it's stuff I like talking about, and stuff that I'm willing to give advice to. What I can't do for you is if you just ask like, hey, here XYZ are my results, what should I do for the next 12 weeks? It's like, well, that's a bit much.
That's a classic question though.
Yeah,
I get those sometimes too.
That stuff you got to pay for.
Yeah, but you made a good point. Like, full disclosure, we're not hosting this to try and get more clients. Like, we had this discussion before we hosted this. So if you're kind of sitting back listening, snarking,
master plan,
I'm not going to go because, I'll never be a client of theirs. Well, that's like the complete opposite of what we're going for here. Like, this is, if anything, I mean, again, I'm not, by no means is this not for existing clients, potential clients. I mean, it's for all of that. Yes. But I think above all else, it's for people who can never foresee themselves, at least in the immediate future, like going to a coaching business, whether that be for nutrition or fitness.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of like people on both ends of that spectrum, but definitely like the people who don't foresee themselves using that type of service are really going to benefit from this.
Yeah. It's more for, like you said, it's all the existing people that we work with for sure, and curious people for sure, but also those people that like have been maybe following along a little bit, and they, for whatever reason, whether it be a commitment of any kind, like time, effort, financial commitment, whatever it is kind of holding you back a little bit. This is a chance to get kind of a little tidbit.
Yeah, it's almost like the best of both worlds.
Yeah. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Because we work with the people we work with every single day, and we can talk to them about this stuff every day. It's the people that we don't get to reach.
Well, and I mean, there's tons of figures out there that I don't really have an example off the top of my head, but kind of like figures in the health and fitness industry who 100% they offer one-on-one stuff, but I'm never, ever, ever going to pay for that service from them. But does that mean I wouldn't pay to go to like one of their seminars or whatever? Like, absolutely, I would love to. And there's a lot that I would like to go to in the future.
Yeah,
so
I have an example of that. The Barbell Shrugged crew.
Yeah.
Like, I listened to their podcast for a long time. Did a couple online like modules and stuff through their online store. They have like a coaching escape. I forget what they call it, but like I just can't afford to go. Like the time commitment, afford meaning like my time and the financial commitment is just something that I didn't want to. Clearly it wasn't a big enough priority for me to invest those two things into. It's not that I couldn't, it's just because it's always like, if you want to bad enough, you're going to find a way to do it. But just never did that, but gained so much value from them in other ways.
Yeah. That's a good example.
Yeah. That's the way to go. Okay. So that's, I covered my gig. You got 3 things to talk about as well.
Yeah.
One is something that is a really cool thing to me. And we talked about it a little bit, I think last week in the podcast, was the circadian rhythm. And your first part or module is going to be mastering your own, the attendees' circadian rhythm for performance. So how do those things even relate?
Yeah.
And why is it yours? Why isn't it just like a generic?
That's a good point. So the reason I decided to talk about this one in the first place was because, actually this one came from when I did my neuronutrition seminar in Ottawa. So I had 4 different modules there. One of them was, I didn't call it circadian rhythm, but it had a lot of the same concepts in it. And just from the feedback I got, and even like when I was giving the talk based on the facial expressions and the interactions from the audience, I could tell that like this specific kind of module was what people found like most interesting and most useful. So that was kind of like the first kind of sure sign that, okay, I need to get this out to more people. Mm-hmm. Because it's so simple, yet so underappreciated. Like, I guess I know we've talked about this a lot, but like just to give everyone an example of what your circadian rhythm even is, we've covered it a few times, but I mean, it's basically your sleep wake cycle. Like and again, like this, like it literally controls absolutely everything. I mean, it controls when you feel tired, when you're going to sleep, when you wake up, and how you feel when you wake up, your energy throughout the day. It controls your release of every single hormone, essentially. So what that means is, and I mean hormones like testosterone, insulin, cortisol. So what all that means is, again, we're kind of just like opening up a new rabbit hole here, but what all that means is it's also going to control like how you deal with the foods that you eat, how stressed you're going to be in response to someone cutting you off in traffic versus your workout, like how you're going to adapt to a workout. I mean, it's absolutely everything. So like all that being said, we need to just simplify this. So the goal with, like I said, optimizing your individual circadian rhythm is, well, you want more daily energy and you want better sleep. And those are kind of two of the same things. They obviously feed into one another, but those are the two goals with this module. So I say your circadian rhythm because everyone has, everyone has a different sleep wake cycle, whether that's on purpose or just coincidentally. Like people are going to wake up at a different time, work out at a different time, go to bed at a different time. So this will be about it. I'm not just going to give you like, hey, here's the optimal time to go to bed and wake up. Cause I mean, that's, I can do that on like social media or whatever. So this is going to be like, okay, based on your daily commitments and, when you train, when you're at work and all that. So what can you actually do now to regulate your circadian rhythm as best as possible? Again, so why do we want to do that? Because you want your circadian rhythm to be in tune, because then you're going to have more daily energy. Your sleep's going to be better. And it's just going to be kind of that positive feedback loop. Like obviously if you have more energy, better sleep, like you're just going to be a better athlete. And I mean, a side note to that, and I'll probably touch on this a little bit at the seminar. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just to help people appreciate the power and influence of the circadian rhythm, I'll just show you a little bit about basically what happens when that becomes dysregulated. So, and we've talked about this before. The classic example is people on shift work.
Right.
I mean, more prone to, you name it, inflammation, more prone to cancer, more prone to literally every illness there is. But then there's kind of like some more specifics that you can look at. So like how does blue light exposure, so something like laptop, phone, affect your melatonin release before bed? So like, not going to spend a lot of time on that, but just so that people can like appreciate kind of the power of this. Because if you're spending any amount of time on a device before bed, that's going to push your melatonin release back by 30 to 60 minutes. And it's going to reduce its total duration of melatonin release throughout the entire night. So, I mean, that right there is like one specific example of how your sleep is going to be shit just because you wanted to creep Instagram before you went to bed. This is what I mean. Like, it's so simple yet complex. And I think with something like this, I think this one in particular, people need to understand kind of a little bit about how it works. Because if I were just to tell you, hey, don't go on your phone before bed, that's not good, people just kind of go like, nah, whatever. Right?
Yeah, it's like saying eat your vegetables.
Exactly, right? Like, so
it doesn't really help.
Yeah, so that's why I'll explain a little bit more about this one. And then we'll go over some assessments that you can use on yourself too. So just and it'll be literally mini questionnaire. How much energy do you have when you wake up in the morning? What types of symptoms do you have in the morning? These can differ based on male or female. So like, are you pitching a tent first thing in the morning? That's a massive indicator for male health. Yeah. What like sleep onset? So how long it takes you to get to sleep? Are you staying awake? So this is one thing that I've found to be incredibly common. And I mean, this is also one of the reasons why I threw this in here, is because through working with clients, 90% of the people, when they fill out my assessment, say, either one or the other or both. They say it takes me a long time to get to sleep. And then they say I wake up 2 to 3 times throughout the night. So that right there, if you could just improve that alone, right? So
everything changes.
Yeah. So that's another thing we'll look at. And then you'll be able to figure out what it actually means, because it's always going to mean a little bit of a different thing. I'll tie the cortisol story into this too, because remember, you want that perfect pattern of cortisol where you want it high in the morning, you want it low at night. All these things kind of begin to tie into one another.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to talk about that, kind of what you want to do when you wake up in the morning, what you can do before bed, etc.
Cool. I like how you're not going to do like the Mark Wahlberg thing where he always posts on his Instagram where he's like working out at 3:30 in the morning and talking about how everyone needs to get up at 3:30 in the morning if they want to be a great person and all this bullshit. And then he also posts at like 7 p.m. him in bed. It's like, dude, I'm still working at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Of course you're up at 3:30.
Well, that's what I mean, right?
It's just, yeah. So it's not like you got to go to bed at 9 and you got to wake up at 6 and you got to, you got to stop being on your phone exactly 90 minutes before you go to bed. And it's not like a to-do list. Yeah. It's more customizable because everyone's so different.
Yeah.
Not only on like a physiological level, but just daily routine and priorities of things that they have. Like you have to do certain things in your day.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're working shift work, then you're working shift work. It's not like you can just like, bring your bed to work and have a sleep, So it's like, how do you manage the chaos, I guess, of what everybody's life is a little bit chaotic in some way. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just chaos is good, but
well, and I want people to learn about it too, so that if you find yourself in a new circumstance or scenario several months or years down the road, you can relate back and be like, oh shit, I understand this. And now I have an idea of what I can actually do to improve this.
Yeah.
So it's empowering having knowledge about how your body works, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's going to be a cool one. I'm also curious about things like, because we talk a lot about having a hard time falling asleep, getting up a whole bunch through the night, having to wake up early. But I'm also curious about what the flip side of that is. Like, say somebody's staying up till midnight and then sleeping till 11 every single day because they work, say, what would be a shift that would fit in there? Like a 2 to 10 or 3 to 11. My cousin works like a 3 to 11 at the township in Dorchester. And like, that's an odd time to work,
strange,
So, cause you're not getting home till a little bit later. So it's like the natural thing is, I'm up late, so I'm going to sleep in. But if you're sleeping from midnight to 11 a.m.,
that's an issue.
It's like, are you sleeping the whole way through that also? Or are you getting up at like 8 o'clock and then just be like, I don't have to get up. I don't work till 3. And then you're going back to bed. Like what's the situation there and how that affects this natural rhythm that we all have?
Yeah, I'll definitely add a little bit in there about that as well. Cause you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like more sleep is sometimes as bad as not enough sleep, like over a long period of time. Obviously there's exceptions, especially for athletes, like middle of a competition. Yeah, you're probably going to need a couple extra hours of sleep. But yeah, if you're rotting in your bed for that long of a period of time, finding that you need like constant naps, especially at all the wrong times of day. Not only is it going to kind of worsen things because it's just going to mess up your schedule even more, but more likely than anything is that it's more of it's like suggesting or identifying a more serious underlying problem, basically. Right. Like if you feel the need that you have to sleep that much, well, then there's something else going on that we need to address.
Yeah. It's always like, it's kind of like pain too. Like the pain that you're feeling. So say you have knee pain, it's usually not the knee
that's a good example.
It's either something above or below that system that's causing some issues.
Yeah.
Your second bit's going to be about nutrients specific to hypertrophy.
Yeah, this one's going to be tough to wrap up in however much time I have. So I'll just, when I do it, I'll try and pick, obviously the ones that are relatable for the most number of people. Yeah. So like to give you an example of that, one thing I decided against including in, actually, I'm not sure if it was this module or the last one, but one thing I decided against incorporating was kind of fueling differently. So that could include nutrients for hypertrophy based on time of your menstrual cycle. I was like, okay, well, that applies to 50%. So that's right. It's not practical.
Right.
I mean, I was thinking, well, hey, the guys that come here, like you can impress your significant other if you have one with this, but no, I just threw that out. So that's for another time. This one.
So it's not just protein?
Well, so funny you asked that, because I was actually going to just completely look over that, but then I paused and thought for a little bit, and I was like, protein, yes, very, very basic when it comes to hypertrophy, but at the same time, like so incredibly misunderstood. So that's actually going to be one of the chapters, that I throw in there, because even if I were to, I'm not going to do this, but even if I were to just sit there and go over the myths of protein for like an hour, that'd be something, because there's so many out there. But I'll cover, so protein requirements, recommended intake for male versus female, and then training age is another really important one. Like, to give you an example, I'm not going to give away the farm here, but to give you an example, so people who are, this is like rough cutoff line, but people who are under the age of like 45 to 50, they can stimulate maximum muscle growth after a training session with only 20 to 25 grams of protein. So now that being said, it depends on the protein source. Like, it depends on the leucine content, and that's what I'm going to cover as well. But point being, 20 to 25 grams. As you get older, so people, once you hit a training age, again, rough cutoff, like anywhere from 40 to 50, once you get older and older, we know that you need double that to stimulate equal amounts of muscle growth after a training session. So to stimulate like equal signals, like equally powerful signals of muscle growth, the younger person, they're fine with this lesser amount. The older person, they need way more, just because their system's kind of like, it's tired, right? So it needs a bit of a pick me up. So we'll go over some different scenarios like that. Plant versus whey protein, because there's big differences there. Maybe I'll throw in like the BCAAs versus the EAAs. I haven't really decided on that yet. But the other big thing that I'll cover is, we hear a lot about protein timing, like the anabolic window and all that. So I'll cover that as well, because that's another thing where just like the sheer dose is different depending on the individual, the importance of timing differs depending on the individual. Some people, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as you're getting in your total protein in a day, that's cool. Other people, you need that kind of pulsatile protein stimulus, like around your training session. So that's, and like numbers too, I'll throw that in there. Cool. Even though it's, again, very basic, but a lot of people don't know about it. So I'm not going to,
basic to you.
So I'm not going to get into like more of the advanced ones until I cover this basic one first. And then after that, I'll go over some, I'm not going to spill the beans again, but some different nutrients that touch on, like, I'll focus on kind of a different, because there's a lot of systems working when we talk about building muscle. Right. So I'll touch on some certain nutrients that affect inflammation, some nutrients that affect like oxidation. So if you hear the term antioxidants, so I'll touch on I'll touch on some nutrients that are antioxidants and how that ties into hypertrophy. And then there's some other minerals that if you're deficient in them, you're not going to build as muscle as well as you can. So again, these are kind of like down the line. It's like, okay, I have protein taken care of, so now let's take care of these nutrients. Right. And actually, to be honest, one of the best, I'll just give you this one. One of the best examples is low zinc. So you need zinc for muscle protein synthesis, and it's pretty commonly low. So we'll talk a little bit about that one and some of the other ones.
Cool. That's going to be
an eye opener for sure. It's funny because like as we're both talking about our different modules, it's like
it's complex, but I want to simplify it. But you can't simplify it too much because it is that complex that people need to understand that there are this many different pieces to it. It's like there's a point where things like there's a certain art to be able to take something complex and make it simple and absorbable. But then you also have to bring it back to like, okay, but you still have to do this. Like this is a simple concept that I'm explaining.
Exactly, yeah.
But you still have to do all of these complex pieces in order to get the best results possible. Now you take one of those pieces out, fine, but be okay with the fact that you're not getting the maximum potential out of your performance or recovery or whatever the thing that we're talking about is. You have to be okay with that. And if you're okay with that, then cool. Yeah. Just keep doing what you're doing.
And this is kind of like that right there basically identifies my love-hate relationship with Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I try and use it a lot, but it's, that's that kind of inner battle is something that I have like every time I do a fucking post. It's like I'm leaving out so mumuch detail, but if I add it in there, no one's going to read it.
Which is frustrating.
It's annoying as hell.
Yeah.
But that's a separate comment.
Yeah, totally agree though. I guess that's enough. That's enough of the info on that one. Last module for you, your third one is going to be some advanced tools and methods for recovery. So very different things that people typically think about. Yeah,
and similar to yours, these are going to tie into one another very, very well.
Right, yeah.
So similar to, like when it comes to recovery, similar to, really the circadian rhythm, like it's very simple yet complex. And at the same time, like people don't appreciate it. So what I mean by that is like when you hear advanced tools for recovery, I'm assuming a lot of people kind of think like, I don't know, they probably revert to thinking about the new gadget that, the jigsaw that has the mobility tool attached to the end of it, and you drive that into a muscle and turn it on. It's supposed to loosen up. Like they probably think about things like that, right?
Yeah.
Like objects, items,
actual physical tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
like
this,
hammer.
Yeah, exactly. But so like the stuff, and you could even throw supplements into that category, to be honest. But meanwhile, the stuff I'm going to talk about is most people just totally underappreciate this, never think about it, like blows all that stuff out of the water. It's the same idea as the protein, where with this, it's like, if you're not doing these things first, all that stuff you're doing afterwards is basically useless.
Yeah, totally. I like this example all the time, and I heard it for the first time in one of the OPEX modules, but fitness and health industry in general right now is focusing on things like what tap you're going to have on your sink and what hardware you're going to have on your cabinets and what color your walls are going to be before you've even determined whether or not that land is even zoned to build a house on.
Yeah.
People are so far. It's like, I don't care about that. That's hard. That seems like a lot of steps. I just want to pick out pretty colors. It's like, okay, you can do that, but understand that without creating the foundation and actually building something that is in the right spot and where it's supposed to be, all this other shit you're talking about, like you can jigsaw your fucking head off, and wrap a voodoo band around your entire body and do whatever you want, but that's not where to start.
Yeah,
that's like if you've done the things that you're going to explain, then start exploring these more advanced options.
Yeah, that's the perfect example.
Not more advanced, but more fancy, I guess. It's not even advanced. It's just a fancy thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's the perfect example. That you can always use a house to explain anything, I swear. or car.
Cars
house or car. Yeah, one of the biggest ones, and I told you a little bit about this before we started recording today. One of the biggest ones in this one, so one of the 5 is I just call basically be a fucking monk, be a Zen athlete.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a lot about what that means, but what this is if you don't have your stress under control, then everything else is useless. I mean, that it's as simple as that. And again, this is another one of those ones where I think people need to understand a little bit about the mechanisms behind it, explain to them why this is so important, and then they're more likely to apply it. And it's not going to be, go pound a bunch of adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha or rhodiola, and then, you'll be fine and you can not sleep, stress yourself out all day, get pissed off when someone cuts you off in traffic. But as long as you have these herbs on the side, you'll be fine. Well, no, it's like you said, it's like those are items and accessories in your house if you have a good foundation. So this will be about building your foundation. So what is the importance as it relates to athletic performance, because that's what we're talking about. What is the importance of actually controlling your stress and being, like I said, like that kind of zened out athlete? Like you have high stress resiliency, so you don't get bothered by the little things. You have a high heart rate variability. You have a low baseline heart rate. You're able to kind of like ramp yourself up at the right times and then bring yourself back down like fast and efficiently. So these are the things that go into, like, these are what's going to really help you hit that next level. Again, it's not like, do some of these supplements serve a purpose? Yeah, absolutely. But you have to take care of this first. So this one, yeah. And that's one of the 5, but this one's going to be more. And for that one, especially, okay, first, how can I assess myself? And then what can I do to address that? The other one I'll probably talk about in this chapter is heat or sauna. To be honest, I'm undecided about the cold, but the heat will be in there for sure. If the cold's in there, it'll be in a chapter of, okay, this is how you recover in training versus this is how you recover in competition, because there's massive differences. And the sauna is a perfect example. The cold's another perfect example. So a lot of these things are going to tie in together. But yeah, I've put some thought into this one and made them not only as practical and as applicable as possible, but also like unique. Like I tried to think of things that people wouldn't necessarily think of. They don't necessarily see every day on Instagram. Like it's not like you said, it's not, go take an extra scoop of protein or like get more sleep. Like obviously these are factors. Yeah. These are equally important things that we don't necessarily think about.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the things that should probably be looked at before that extra scoop of protein. Again, like it's the foundational stuff that, and none of this stuff is new. It's not like we came up with it.
No,
right? That's the thing. Like it's just kind of been, it's easy, especially with how the fitness and there's just like the state of the industry right now. It's really flashy, shiny.
Yeah.
It's really glamorous. It's made to look, I don't know, out to be way more than it actually is, to be honest. Like, ask any of these Instagram models what fitness is. It's like, no, I don't know what the fuck it is. I don't know what it is either. And that's what I do. That's all I do. There's so many different pieces to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be the shiniest object in the room that gets the best results. It can be a lot more simple than that.
Part of me thinks that, like, if we're looking at the fitness industry, at CrossFit especially, part of me thinks that we're returning a little bit more to these grassroots things that look more at like, less is more, recovery is the most important thing. Yeah. But then it's still not fully there by any means. Like there's still at least equal or even more on the other side of the camp. It's still like, fancy gadgets and more, and all that other shit doesn't matter. Like if we could ever combine those,
it'd be great.
So that's the goal.
I mean, if you're doubting that, like, just look at the mobility tools that are out there. Like you got things that look like, I don't know, spaceships, and you're rolling on it, and it's like, get the fuck out.
All you really need is your fucking body, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like learn to move better, move more often, and you won't have to stick a lacrosse ball up your butt to make yourself feel better. You know what I mean? It drives